I'd like to call the work session to order for March 21st, 2022. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Let the record reflect that all members are present.
Thank you. We have 3 items on the agenda tonight. Would like to remind council that staff will be pausing intermediately to answer any questions. We have up first, go ahead and see what I got here. Comprehensive study overview, please introduce yourselves.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Lyman Lockett, Human Resources Director. Tonight, we're here to provide information on the compensation study. As part of the strategic plan, Council established a goal to do a compensation study to inform the 2023 budget. So we contracted with the Siegel Company. They're here tonight to provide some findings from this study and answer any questions you may have. I'd like to introduce Ruth Ann Elledge and Carol Mercer from the Siegel Company.
Thank you, Lyman. I appreciate it. And Mayor and Council, thank you for the time tonight to be here to talk with you about the results of the study. We've put together a brief presentation that we think will cover the primary points of the study. Certainly, we want to take questions as we walk through the presentation so that if you have questions about any of the steps we've taken or any of the findings we have, we're happy to ask and answer those when they come up, so we don't have to wait till the end if that's okay, Mayor.
That's fine. Just let us know when you're pausing and you want some questions or feedback from us, okay?
Will do. So I want to begin by thanking both Carol and Lyman for their support for this study. All of our work is a collaborative project. We've worked together to identify what are some of the key elements that needs to be considered as part of the compensation study. And today we want to go over just a little bit about Siegel. You may already be familiar with our company, so I won't spend hardly any time on that at all. Talk just for a moment about the objectives of the study, a little bit about the methodology and the approach that we took, our findings, recommendations, and any questions and answers that you might have. But again, please do feel free to raise those questions as we go over the various slides in case you want to get them asked and answered then. As I said, I won't spend a lot of time talking about Siegel. We're a national firm. We're probably one of the largest firms that specializes in public sector consulting. A lot of firms out there will do both corporate, private, nonprofits, but we do specialize in that. And specifically, what you wanted done was right in our wheelhouse in terms of benchmarking, pay system design, looking at performance, looking at the competitiveness of your market, identifying who your market is, and so forth. So we've done many, many studies throughout the years in the state of Arizona, and I've really enjoyed coming back here to work with you on this study. When we first began the study, of course, the city had an RFP, and we proposed on it. And one of the things that we talked early on as we began the study was to find out what are the objectives that you were trying to accomplish as a result of this study. And it became very clear that you're in a very dynamic market, and the city has a strong interest in recruiting and retaining strong, high-performing talent. Your service delivery requirements are high, and so you have to have employees that are able to step up and provide that level of service. So we began looking at to begin with your compensation philosophy. And within that compensation philosophy, it helps define or set some parameters for reviewing your compensation system. And we'll talk about that in just a few moments. Part of that includes who you're going to compete with, what relationship you want to have to market, those kinds of things. So we did discuss your comp philosophy. We were able to clarify a few questions we had about it. And then work through looking at not only your market competitiveness, but looking at some internal systems. So those were the kind of the general objectives that we had in mind to accomplish as a result of this study. In reference to the compensation philosophy, a compensation philosophy really does have a role in designing compensation and benefits because it's a communication tool you can use to explain to your employees how you're going to attract and how you're going to set a compensation package that will help you attract those strong performing employees, motivate them to providing those high levels of service that are demanded here by your citizens in a good way. Help you compete in a limited pool, because there's a lot of folks in this region that are all competing with you for the same applicant pool. But also bring them in and make sure that they're totally aligned on the overall vision that you're trying to accomplish, the goals and objectives, and that is a key part of your compensation philosophy. But also bringing in the whole concept of, if this is going to be sustainable, it has to be fiscally affordable. So all of those concepts are parameters that are part of your compensation philosophy. There's a couple other key pieces that we keep in mind, especially when we're doing a market study. In the market study, our compensation philosophy talks a little bit about external versus internal equity. And the external equity is that external market that you're competing with. And so when we bring in market data, there's also kind of an internal alignment of positions. And so we're trying to do a balance between what is market competitive and how do you keep that internal alignment of positions. And so we recognize that as we conduct this compensation study. The key component in the study that does help directly affect what we did was the definition of who you're going to collect market data from. And in our philosophy, we had agreed that we were going to have peers that were within Maricopa County. And so in a few moments, you'll see a list of those peers where we collected data to determine your market competitiveness. And then, of course, the positioning of your pay is desired to be at market in a way that you can compete with those other peers. There's other things beyond market factors that we do acknowledge are part of the overall compensation. This was not specifically a total compensation study where we looked at all benefits, but we did look at some components of the benefit package. So to conduct the study, we selected 111 jobs within the city of Goodyear to collect market data on. And when we do a custom study like this, a survey, we do an analysis of the city to make sure that those studies are that those jobs are representative of positions across the entire organization. Because while we may have market data on 111 jobs, we want to be able to apply that data to all positions. So while that survey may have only included 111 of your total jobs, it was applied to all positions within the county, within the city. So we selected the benchmark jobs, then we selected the peers that were going to be used to collect the data from. And we had 11 that were identified within Maricopa County. We'll show that list to you on the next slide. As a reference point, we also did look at general industry data, but for the most part, the survey data was used as the primary source for evaluating the competitiveness of your system. The survey itself, which again was a custom survey that was designed specifically for the city of Goodyear, looked at, for these benchmark jobs, base pay ranges, the minimum, maximum, and then the actual pay rates. And then we pulled in information on what other pay practices were being utilized in those other cities. Things like how often do they adjust their pay schedule, what are they anticipating doing with their pay schedule, what are some of their pay progression policies, how they move through the pay range, that sort of thing. And then we did pull in some benefits data. Again, this was not a total comp study, but we looked at some things like paid time off, deferred comp, defined contribution, retirement plans, those kinds of things. These are the peers that were selected to gather market data from. These 11 were requested and provided to us. Either they completed the survey or provided us with data where we could complete the survey on their behalf. And so we had data from all 11 peers. So I'd like to start with kind of the broad overall review of what we saw in terms of the competitiveness of the city of Goodyear. If you look at the pay structure, and you look at the entries, the midpoint, which is your kind of market competitive tool, your market competitive point, and then the maximum. and compare that on average to all of these 11 peers, overall, your pay structures are slightly lagging what you see in your peers. Your overall average minimums are 3% lower than what your peers are. Your midpoint is 2%, and the maximum is 2% also. Then you can begin to kind of pull back the onion or peel the onion back and look at the different structures, because the competitiveness does vary a little bit by structure. The exempt structure, which is those jobs that are salaried, is pretty much the same as what you saw in your overall. And for your non-exempt structures, and these are hourly positions, they're lagging a little bit further at minimum, similar competitiveness at midpoint, and a little bit more competitive at maximum. They're right at the market average. If you look at the fire structure, the MOU, it's 99% of market minimums, 98 at mid, 97 at max, and then police is at 97 across the board. So you can see there is some variability, but you're overall lagging anywhere from 2 to 4%, depending on what structure you're looking at. I want to also remind Mayor and Council that this data is effective as of December 1. This study was started at that time. So I want to keep in mind that as you move forward, this data is now starting to get a little bit older, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we want to discuss that or move forward with that in the future. What I thought was interesting also was to look at your competitiveness by peer. And this slide gives you an idea of how you are faring compared to the various 11 peers. And if you look at the peers that you're lagging the most, in other words, City of Tempe is 7% higher than what Avondale is, what Goodyear is, and Avondale is 6% higher. Then as you begin to move down, you'll see that of your peers, 7 of them are 3%, paying 3% or greater at midpoint. Midpoint is what we're considering your market competitive location in the pay range. Goodyear and Glendale are very close together. And then you see Buckeye and Peoria and Phoenix are lagging the city of Goodyear a little bit. So of your 11 peers, 1 is competitive with you, 3 are lagging you, and the remainder of them are leading you as far as the overall competitiveness. Interestingly enough, as we were gathering data and going back and asking questions to clarify some of the responses in some of the conversations we had with these peers, it does appear that they are actually considering adjustments to their pay structures as we were gathering that data. It was not in effect at that time, but I just wanted to point out to Council that it's adjustments anywhere from 2.5% to 5% have been heard anecdotally as being under consideration by these peers. So in addition to the pay data, there are quite a few different questions we asked on other pay practices. As I mentioned earlier, some of it has to do with pay administration, such as pay progression, pay guidelines, how often schedules are adjusted and how adjustments are provided, how starting salaries are being handled, and then the various types of different stipends such as bilingual pay, standby, callback, whether or not certain practices were in place like retention bonuses, relocation allowances, referral bonuses, sign-on bonuses, those kinds of things. And then tuition assistance, wellness programs, and other types of leave and leave cash out, and finally also deferred comp and defined contribution plan. So these were all practices that we surveyed that we found that collectively among all the peers, City of Goodyear was more or less about the same. In fact, in some areas you were providing some of these and others were not. But overall, if you look at those that were providing it, you were competitive with them, okay? So in looking at our overall findings, we think that at this point in time, based on the December 2021 data, you're slightly behind market. That's a good news, actually, because what that means is you've been keeping up with market over time, and the market is very dynamic right now. So I think it's important to keep an eye on it, because as it continues to move, if you will monitor that. And I think during your budget process, there'll be some additional discussions about additional data that HR is going to collect. So I think that, we need to monitor that pretty closely. One of the things, there were two things that we did identify in terms of pay practices that the city of Goodyear may want to consider. It looks like your tuition reimbursement is starting to lag behind the average payments that are provided by other peers. And so you may want to consider an adjustment to your maximum allowable tuition reimbursement amount. The other thing we saw is that your sick leave cash out, if you look at the different approaches that are being provided by other peers, you may want to consider looking at some of the levels of cash out. Some are, in fact, quite a number are offering cash out annually, which is not something that you do, and you may want to think about, if that's an option you may want to consider. Some of them don't have the 10-year requirement when separation or 10-year service is required for payout when retirement or separation occurs. And so there's some different components of your sick leave cash out that you may want to consider evaluating as you begin to go through looking at the survey results. What we do recommend is that as HR continues to gather more updates on how much the market is moving, that you think about they come back to you with some suggestions about some adjustment to pay structure if market is dynamic to the point where it's moved enough, you're moving out of your comfort zone with the competitiveness of your pay structures. There are some jobs in particular within that overall competitiveness. Some are more competitive than others. And some of those groups of jobs that are lagging more, you may want to consider moving those to a range of pay that is more competitive. And we've given a report to HR for them to look at those. And then again, I think you may want to look at moving your tuition assistance from your $4,500 to $5,000, which is what we're seeing more on average in the market, and then looking at your sick leave cash out. So I will pause here and see what questions you have.
Okay, with that, anybody want to start? Any questions? Go ahead, Councilmember Bray.
So this is strictly just looking at cash values. It has no questions or anything about how the culture of the city or how the employees are feeling that in this study?
Correct. That was not within the scope of the study. Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all I have for the moment.
Councilmember Loretano.
This may be more a Lyman question, I'm not quite sure, just so I up to date. What are, if our tuition assistance is 45, is it, most people just do 5,000s? I knew some cities used to do like 2 semesters at a community college to equal,
There are some different components that we're seeing out there with tuition assistance. The IRS maximum is $5,250. So some are at the $5,250, but generally most are structured the same. If you get tuition reimbursement, you have to stay with the city for some length of time before you pay it back. And most are on a reimbursement. We actually have an enhancement to our program where we provide it upfront. So it's not only a reimbursement. You have the choice of doing a reimbursement, or you can get your monies up front. So that's not a barrier for furthering your education.
And when you use a tuition, not everyone's going to use it, so it's not something everyone's going to use the 5,000. So increasing it doesn't mean we're increasing it. It's not always going to get used. It's just,
correct.
Is it for seminars as well, or just tuition for a degree or a furthering, like?
So we added certifications about 3 to probably 5, maybe 6 years ago. We added certifications as well. So it's not only for degree attainment, certifications are also included. And we would anticipate that this would likely be budget neutral, but we're still looking at what a recommendation might be, and we would bring that back in the budget process.
Okay, I don't have a problem with that. I just wanted to get a little clarification on what that is, because I know it's changed a lot. And then the other one is the sick leave cash out. How does that work if you do it yearly for taxes? Is it once at the end of the year, like a big check, and then they get kind of reamed with taxes then, or?
Yeah, again, this is, we're seeing some interesting things out there. So I would say that there really isn't a consistency that we're seeing. Some have, there's a few cities out there that have an annual cash out, like we do with vacation.
Yeah.
So vacation, you can put in for a cash out annually. Some have a program like that. Others, and if there's any consistency, some may have an earlier cash out. So ours is at 10 years. You have to reach 10 years before you get a cash out of any kind. Some, it's as early as 5 years. So we're looking at all the variations, and again, we'll come back with a recommendation so that we can stay market competitive here.
Okay, and I know some it goes into, you can go into your retirement or
Yeah,
that type of, I guess my concern on that is we want people, if they're sick, to stay home and not build an incentive where there's cash, so you might come to work, especially after getting through COVID. If you're maybe just a little sick, I want people to use it to stay home. So I don't know what a good way, if it's through retirement or how you build that into the system to make it,
it's a great point.
stay home.
Yeah, great point. And I think if there's a silver lining with COVID, I think we've kind of pushed to that place where you stay home when you're sick, and certainly that's what we want people to do. I do think that structurally what we would try and design is something that speaks to a retention component, so you get something when you leave, but also something that keeps that safety net in place. So where's that balance of making sure you have a safety net if you have to use it, and then also structuring something that also can act maybe as a retention component as well.
Yeah, so you have enough like for FMLA, or so you know, short term, so you have something to, until you go on that. So, yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Appreciate the insight.
Councilmember Kano?
Thank you. I see that we studied 111 job classifications. How many job classifications are in the city?
Do you have the exact number? 300?
300,
Yeah,
okay.
300.
So approximately a third or so.
Yes.
And did it capture all ranges of the pay grades? I mean, from groundskeeper up or, okay. And how many public safety positions were studied? Sworn?
Actually, we covered all public safety sworn positions
Okay.
in the study.
Okay, that's good. Now, I believe that you said it was not a total compensation study.
Correct.
Okay, so you selected some benefits, but not all. What about deferred comp? How does that factor into the calculation at all?
So deferred comp was looked at as a separate offering. And so we were looking at what were the different types of deferred comp that was offered. And so it was not used to calculate within the value of the position. We were just, the purpose of this was really to get a sense of what types of plans were offered, what percentages, what were matching contribution, those kinds of things. And so it was not converted to a value.
Okay.
It was just reported.
Is that information available? I mean, how do we stand in terms of deferred comp? I feel like we were a little late to the game in offering it, but now that we do, I'm just curious how we stand with our peers, cities.
I would say you're competitive because there's still some cities that don't offer very little deferred comp, you know. So I think when you look at the overall respondents, I think you're in pretty good shape, comparatively speaking.
Okay. On, I can find it, I think it's slide 11. About the competitive market practices. There was a lot of categories where you did surveys, but none of that information was provided to us. And I know you told us that we were fairly competitive, but there's nothing for us to benchmark against or to evaluate.
So we have a list of each of the peers and what their practice was. What we found is that some do not offer the benefit that you offer. Of those that do offer it, you are competitive with them. So we have more detail that we can provide you if you have specific questions.
Okay. So we're really focusing on pay. It seems that that's truly what it is. Okay. And I think this is my last question on slide 4 of part of the objectives that we were looking at was, internal systems, whether or not they were effective in maintaining our compensation program. Was that part of this survey study?
Specifically, we were looking at the internal equity component of the study and how that was still being, how successful that was still being utilized. And we made a couple of suggestions about some tweaks, but overall, it's really doing a really good job of looking at new jobs, how they place into the pay structure, and how that fits in with market competitiveness.
Okay,
So that was a primary.
It really wasn't a system study, it was
It was components of the system.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Campbell?
Lyman, these are for you. I didn't hear the answer to Councilmember Kano's question of how many job titles are there in the Goodyear city government?
So roughly 300. We're over, somewhere over 300,
Okay.
so about a third.
That's always an amazing number to us, because if you'll remember when we were getting a new computer system and we found out there was 1,000 different ways to put the money or the forms through, we never dreamed there were 1,000 different programs to use. So that's something that I'm interested in. Okay, so will the market adjustment that we just recently raise the pay structure by at least 2%, or was this done taking in the market adjustment that we've already done?
Yes, this is the market adjustment that we did in July of 21 was taken into consideration. So this data is as of December of 2021.
Okay, and none
So
of
it is
the
included.
American Recovery Act monies were included in that?
This study looked at ranges. It looked at the salary ranges. So, part of that was directed to the market adjustment that we gave. So that market adjustment was included when we moved our pay ranges. So that is taken into consideration.
Okay, good. And I have two more. Well, it's actually really one with two questions. So the tuition assistance, or did you just say the limit was $5,250?
That's the
Is
IRS
that by
limit.
law or by
Correct, yeah.
us?
That's the IRS limit before you're taxed
Okay.
on what you receive. So you can go above that, but the employee would be taxed on anything beyond
Okay, but
$5,250.
if we did at $5,250, they would not be taxed on it?
Correct.
Okay, and my next question is, how many of our employees take advantage of this tuition assistance? Just a rough number.
I would say we're probably around maybe 50 per year. That's
That's great, because
50
every one
to
of them
60.
that goes through that, they're bringing more back to our city. So I'm really happy that we're offering that, and I think we should offer as much as we possibly can.
And I would say over the last 3 to 5 years, we've seen an incline, so more and more are taking advantage of it. I think COVID put a little bit of a damper on it, but we hope to see that continue to rise.
Well, that especially helps our employees if we have any type of an upward mobility program, so that they can hone their skills or learn a new job or something. So I'm really in favor of doing the tuition to the max if we can, if we have the money
Great.
to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you for doing the study as well. I do want to be competitive, so I do agree that we should at least be competitive, at least to the benchmark at a minimum. The tuition reimbursement, all my schooling was tuition reimbursement, so I am a fan of that. I don't know how the program's set up here. I only have one other employer to base it off of, but do they have to have a certain grade level to be reimbursed? And if they get the upfront money, and they don't pass the class, then they're on the hook to return that monies as well, I imagine.
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, 5250, that's what that was my limit. I remember that number very well. So yeah, so I'm okay with tuition reimbursement. I always tell people you're leaving that money on the table every year if you're not involved in that program. So go do something. And then we don't do a total compensation package, or do we have that number? I know you look at everybody, but does the city, do we provide that information to our employees with the total, everything that we offer, what the value is to that? I know the rule of thumb, at least like in-house versus a contract person, we would say it's like you're getting paid double with all the benefits essentially. So I don't know. I had past employers that always presented, this is your salary, but your total compensation package is significantly more.
Yeah, as part of our, in your ESS system, there's a total compensation component where an employee can look up their total compensation. We're in the process of enhancing that element right now. We're actually going through a full upgrade, but that component's being enhanced where every employee can go in and look at their total compensation on a regular basis, see the value of, full value, benefits plus
Yeah,
pay.
I think that'd be a good comparison for a future study as well, just so everybody can see everything that's offered. Because we might have a really great something that other cities don't, and it's worth quite a bit of benefit to our employees. That puts us above that 99% type thing. So yeah, so that's, I think I had one other thing, but I can't remember what it is now. Oh, this didn't include the 1% match that we're now offering either. That's part of the total compensation, correct?
And just for clarification's sakes, the study didn't look at total compensation. It's certainly something that we can take into consideration for future studies to include total compensation. That's much more extensive study and certainly something that we could do with council direction. As far as a 1%, we looked at that separately. So our 1% deferred compensation match was looked at with others' deferred compensation to see if we were competitive on that singular component or all the other benefit components that they looked at individually. It wasn't linked together as a total compensation match.
No, that's fine. I understand it's out of the scope, but I'm just, when trying to compare only the salary, we leave a good part of our benefits out of there to compare against. So, but I am on board with at least being competitive with our peers and raising our tuition reimbursement up to at least the 5,000. So, thank you.
Thank you.
What's our current practice on sick leave payout? You have to be here a certain amount of time, and is that time of departure? Is that how that works?
Yes, you have to be here 10 years and 480 hours for our 40-hour employees.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same mind as Councilmember Loretano. When people are sick, I want them to use their sick leave. I don't want them coming in sick and storing money. I think if we make it too often, every year it's a payout or every other year it's a payout, I think it encourages them to stockpile that and not take the sick leave. So I'm with Councilmember Loretano on that part. I also want us to be competitive. We're in a very risky business. I'm kind of risk adverse. And I would prefer us hiring the best and the brightest to avoid those risks, especially in a lot of the services that we provide out there. So I want us to be competitive and the focus on the best and the brightest. So I'm there with that. As far as the tuition reimbursement, I would imagine the impact on the budget would be minimal. With 50 people, they're talking about using that, but I have no problem furthering education and being competitive in that as well. So, anything else?
Additional
Okay.
question, if I can, Mayor. Since you look at a lot of the public sector across the nation, just curious, this is obviously just on pure compensation number, right? Are you seeing other trends where the workforce might start be looking at homework flexibility is becoming a trend rather than, maybe not everybody's seeking the bottom dollar anymore? Or, I agree with the education portion of it and structuring that to make that incentive, but that probably only captures a few employees long-term. So trend-wise, what are you seeing outside of just pure compensation?
Right. And Councilmember, that's a good question because depending on the region that you're in, there's a lot of different things that are being explored. Everything from remote, the teleworking to all types of incentives to wellness programs to reimbursements for things that we wouldn't have thought of in a while. So it depends on your workforce, and you'd asked if this was a workforce survey. Sometimes, in many cases, employers are surveying their workforce to find out what is valuable to them, because we're transitioning from generation to generation, and they have a lot of different, work-life balance is very important to a lot of the new employees out in the workforce. And so having that option, which includes the telework or remote working, some of the, not having to do shifts or being able to rotate through shifts, or there's a lot of things that can be considered that might help improve retention or even attracting employees, but depends on who your workforce is and what, kind of what their state of mind is.
And to that point, are we starting to look outside the box on that kind of thing moving forward? I mean, I agree we have to be competitive, but I think that that's just one piece of the whole puzzle, right? If we can figure out other incentives, whether it's that flexibility or other tools, are we doing that internally as well?
Yes, we're continuing to look at various things that will help us attract and retain, high caliber employees. So I think our ears are always open. And there are some unique things that we do have. However, as Ruth Ann mentioned, the dynamic of the employment market is changing, and it's changing at a rapid pace. So there's a lot of new things being considered out there, and we want to keep our eyes and ears open and bring those things to the forefront as necessary.
Thank you.
Great discussion. Go on. You're up.
Pardon me?
You're up.
I'm up?
Yep.
Well, actually, that was my slide.
Was it? Well, then anything final from anybody, since that's the end? I see you thinking over there, Councilmember Stipp.
Yeah, this is, it's been great information. The numbers are the numbers, and it just kind of is what it is. But is this the year we're doing the employee satisfaction survey?
Yes.
So as we spend all this time talking about compensation, which is just basically raw data and where we sit in the market, et cetera. The real key is how satisfied are the employees and what's happening, what they're doing. There are a million studies that have been done that have proven time and time again, it's not money that keeps people. It's good managers, it's good supervision, it's a good working environment, et cetera. So, this is kind of standard practice, if you will, of us deciding where understanding where we are in the market when the manager comes forward with the budget. But it's the rest of it that is really kind of key to moving forward. So I appreciate getting this information ahead of that instead of the other way around, because now we'll know where we sit in the market as we get that information moving forward. So thank you for the data.
Councilmember Lortano.
And I would agree with what Councilmember Stipp said. I think something that's very important as we move forward, not necessarily for this piece, but as we look at this piece in conjunction with the budget, is that as we grow, workloads grow. And I think that's one thing that can basically, no matter how much you're paying someone, if they feel overworked or overstressed, that they just can't get it all done. I think that's always something that we have to make sure that we keep in mind as we look at the budget and we look at what areas need positions with our exponential growth that we have. So I think that's very important. I think that study helps us to see where we are and how we can balance all those pieces. So thank you.
Good. We okay? Well, then we're ready for the next one. Thank you all.
Very much.
Appreciate the information.
Thank you for your time.
Next item is a review of transportation priorities. Go ahead and please introduce yourselves.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about transportation priorities. In the last few months, the Council and our residents have reinforced the importance of the pressing transportation needs of our rapidly growing city. So we have proposed some transportation projects that we will be covering tonight. On all the slides, you will see a slide number. So in case you want to come and talk about any of the slides in the end. So with your permission, we'd like to start the discussion and maybe just start talking about our presentation first. If you can please hold your questions, comments, concerns till the end, we would really appreciate that.
I want to introduce myself. I'm Hugh Biak, City Traffic Engineer.
No, I apologize. I should have introduced myself and Hugh, and I'm Sumit Mohan, the city engineer. So just to get the ball rolling, we'll be working on our approved FY22 projects. We are currently in the fiscal year 22, so we'll touch a little bit on that. And you saw a note in the manager's memo of Friday of what those transportation projects are. In addition to that, today's discussion would be mostly on the FY 2023 transportation projects that we are proposing. There are 16 in count. And to begin with the FY22 projects, we'll be working on design as well as construction. And for the project details, I will give the floor to Hugh.
Thank you, Sumit. So leading off, we're going to discuss where we are today with our fiscal year 2022 projects. And this includes both design and construction with a dollar amount currently funded at $26.4 million. The first project we have is Boulevard, widening south of Van Buren, which is both design and construction. And that has an asterisk by it, as that is a cost recovery project, just an item of note. Next project, or projects, are traffic signals and intelligent transportation systems project, otherwise abbreviated as ITS. Next project is Saraville, Yuma to Jefferson, which is both design and construction. Next project is the Estrella Bridge, or we refer to as the Estrella Bridge, the Estrella Parkway over the Gila River. That is in design. Very early stages of design, I might add. Next is Estrella and Pebble Creek Parkway at I-10. That is the widening of Estrella Parkway under I-10. It's going to add approximately 4 additional lanes. Next project is Mcdowell Road at Citrus, and currently going through design. That is an intersection improvement project. And the last project listed is Camelback from 303 to 152nd, which is again very early in the design process. So now we're going to get into the proposed fiscal year 2023 CIP. And in these projects, we've proposed 16 projects, again for fiscal year 2023. And these projects involve scallop streets or eliminating scallop streets, our traffic signals and ITS projects, and reducing congestion. And again, an example of the scallop streets intersection or scallop streets would be, again, the well-known one, Boulevard Avenue, just south of Van Buren. On this slide, we have all 16 projects on a map of the city. Generally, these are projects all located north of MC 85. So again, all these projects are in fiscal year 2023. And we have 4 projects that are street design projects, 4 projects that involve street construction, 4 projects involving traffic signal design, and 4 projects are ITS projects. Oh. If I can find my cursor here. It's not the easiest to see. As an example, just give you a quick example. The light green would be our street design projects. Up here in the upper left-hand corner would be Citrus Road between, or I'm sorry, Indian School Road between Citrus and Minnesota, and then McDowell Road over here on the east side of the, or east side, right side of the page, between Litchfield and Dysart. Another location, 110, which is Bullard Avenue between Celebrate Life Way and Roosevelt Street. And the final street design project, which is in the vicinity of Cotton Lane and Yuma. And again, we'll get into these individual projects here in the upcoming slides. So for fiscal year 2023 construction, we've proposed $1,782,900 or identified that amount in funds for these projects. And what we have here are, again, 4 projects that, again, these are all construction. First project listed is Estrella, Illini to Bullard, and keep in mind the number after it refers to the prior exhibit on slide 5. So exhibit 40 corresponds to slide number 5. And the next 3 projects are congestion reduction projects, essentially extension or modification of the existing left turn lanes. First project, Pebble Creek Parkway southbound at Virginia. It's the southbound left turn lane. Estrella Parkway northbound at Roosevelt, it'd be the extension of the northbound left turn lane, and Litchfield Road at McDowell, westbound, which would be the westbound left turn lane. Continuing on with fiscal year 2023 construction projects, these are our proposed ITS projects. They've already been approved by MAG, and these would receive approximately $858,900 in federal funding. And again, most of these projects upgrade existing traffic signal equipment. First project listed, Van Buren Street, it would improve 6 intersections. Yuma Road, which would improve 5 intersections. Indian School Road would also improve 5 intersections. And Cotton Lane, which would improve 3 intersections. And now on this slide is a list of our proposed fiscal year 2023 design projects in the amount of $4,615,800. And on this list, we have Cotton and Yuma, which would add additional lanes. Again, these would be an interim project ahead of State Route 303 construction. Next one is Indian School from Citrus to Minnesota. I'd like to also add this project would also include a traffic signal at the intersection of Citrus Road and Indian School. Bullard Avenue from Celebrate Life Way to Roosevelt. Mcdowell Road, Litchfield to Dizer, which would add a through lane in each direction, being added within the median of Mcdowell Road. And then the next four, are traffic signals. These would be warranted traffic signals. First intersection, Estrella Parkway and Centera Drive or Hudson Way. Next intersection would be 152nd, I believe it's Drive in Van Buren, 165th Avenue and Yuma Road, and then closing it out with Cotton Lane and Elwood Street. And again, the asterisks on this page refer to cost recovery projects, which again, we have 2 indicated on this sheet, which is, again, the first one, Indian School Road, and the second one, Bullard Avenue. So in summary, what we have today for our proposed fiscal year 2023 projects is construction in the amount of $1,782,900, design in the amount of $4,615,800, for a grand total of $6,398,700.
All right, thank you, Hugh. In addition to all this work that we are proposing in FY 2023, you also heard about the construction projects in which you will see the shovels hitting the ground. So you will see construction activity in FY 2023. In addition to that, we will be doing the design of several projects for which construction will happen in the fiscal years 24 to 27. So looking ahead, there are 20 additional new projects that are being proposed in 24 to 27, which you will hear more about when the budget discussions happen in the coming few months, especially related to the CIP. In addition to that, for all the design that we will be doing in FY 23, as well as the projects that were already in the plan in FY 22, we are planning to bring for council's consideration funding plan using general obligation bonds. In addition to that, in the coming fiscal year in FY 2023, we will be updating our transportation master plan in conformance with our general plan. These two go together, but we realize that the transportation needs are so pressing and action needs to be taken now, if not sooner, that we are not waiting for the transportation master plan update implementation, which will take many more months and years to occur. With that in mind, we also hired our city's first transportation planning manager, and that gentleman is in the council room right now. His name is Chris Bridges. So just would like to introduce you to him. He'll be starting with us on April 4th. We are really excited. We got him from Gilbert, and really good and exciting part of the communication is that he's also a Goodyear resident. So he drives these roads and is intimately familiar with the streets and traffic signal woes that all of us have been feeling and are going to address now. With that, just a little prayer. May you always get the green light, always.
Not in Goodyear.
No, it's not.
Sorry, it is not in Goodyear.
Green lights in a row.
Ever.
With,
Unless you're on a fire truck.
All right.
and we have a lot more project-specific details on any of the locations that you may want to hear about. We have slides, individual slides on that as well. So with that, we'll open the floor for receiving direction from you, comments, concerns, anything.
All right, who wants to start?
I will.
Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Campbell.
So I know you're familiar with this because I requested it. When you come and talk about CIP projects, I don't remember all of the other CIP projects that we have approved in the 11 years I've been on council. So I noticed there's 4 here that are going to be completed in 23. So they will drop off of this 17 list. And you're adding 16 more, yet one slide said you're going to add 20.
Thank you for a comment, Mayor and Council. Basically, we are proposing 36 new projects in the FY 23 to 27, but we wanted to focus on the projects that will start work on in FY 23. Those are 16. So 16 in FY 23 plus 20 in 24 to 27 for a total of 36 new CIP projects that will be in the proposed FY 23 to 27 CIP.
Okay, so will the 16 go at the bottom of this list? They won't knock any of these off that we've already approved? And these folks, all these projects won't lose their place in line as we are doing whatever we're doing?
Mayor and Council, that's exactly right. The list that you are looking at are the FY22 projects that we are working on right now. They are already approved projects on which work will continue. These 16 that we are proposing new in FY23 will be just new additional projects. Okay. So we are taking on a lot because we feel that the community and the council have transportation as one of the huge priorities for a rapidly growing city.
Okay. I ask this every month, and I'm going to ask again because at the group I was speaking to last night, they asked me this question: when are the burlap bags going to be taken off of our lights that have been on the lights for at least 10 to 15 years? And the answer is always, we don't have enough traffic, but everybody knows we have plenty of traffic. So we'd like the right turn lane lights and we'd like the left turn lanes because they're obviously synchronized or sinking through it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a burlap bag on it.
Yes.
So what do you think?
Mayor and Council, on the right turn arrows that were covered up, we've activated those at 2 of our intersections. So Bullard and McDowell, 150th Drive and McDowell. Those have been unbagged. The reason why they were there dates back to when the signals were constructed. It was anticipated with them all being there, and that's why those were installed ahead of time. So they were left covered. One, because the traffic facility equipment, the cabinet in particular, does not allow the operation of that arrow for it to function properly. So that's that particular area where we're talking around the mall area. I believe that's the only area we have right turn arrows in the city. So we have activated some of them, and we have begun to change the indications on the ones that haven't been activated yet. I don't know if staff has completed that, but I know they began the activity at specifically 150th Drive and Encanto. And I can't remember.
50th Drive and what?
Well, it's actually 4 roads: 150th Drive, Cambridge Avenue, Virginia Avenue, and Encanto Boulevard. It's the one that's the flashing red light.
Off of Bullard?
No, there are some on Bullard as well. We haven't got to those yet. We did change the coverings, I believe.
Okay.
I believe they, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Looking at Palm Valley Boulevard and McDowell. You know, when we were doing COVID testing, that was such a congested area, and it would have been wonderful to have a left turn lane because a lot of folks coming in from Palm Valley going to the back way to go to JCPenney's or the doctor's office there or to Walmart, they're using that back road. And it would be nice if we had a left turn arrow for those of us that are cutting through to get on McDowell. Because sometimes we can't get through the light. There's so many cars coming over it, but I don't know.
I believe those covers are still in place. I will
don't know.
definitely take that down, and we will look into it this week.
Okay. And my last question, well, actually I have two. What does a transportation planning manager do?
Mayor and Council, this is a new position for us to coordinate all these different priorities and really be working on the transportation master plan as well as implementing all the findings to coordinate with the capital improvement program plan itself to make sure that we are basically meeting all our needs of our growing city. So this person will also be looking at regional funding that is available, which we would hope to compete for, and address all the transportation needs that need to be met.
And they're going to do a management plan for us to look at or something?
That is part of the plan. Right now, basically, we were waiting for the transportation master plan update because the current transportation master plan that we are working on is from 2014. So it is old. So we need to update it, which will happen in the next fiscal year. So the transportation planning manager will look at all the current needs that we have identified right now, because what we did in the last few months when we came up with these transportation priorities was really doing transportation master plan update without the benefit of so much modeling or the public involvement process, which will be a part of the transportation master plan update. But we needed to react and respond to our needs right away. Hence, we came up with these priorities. So these will be fed into the plan of the transportation master plan update as we go forward.
Okay, when will council get an up-to-date briefing on the traffic count on all of our streets or our main thoroughfares? I don't know when's the last time we've had a traffic count. And I think that's really important because all of us know that the traffic has increased, but we don't know how much. We're over 100,000 now, and we know there's more than 100,000 people out on our roads every day.
Right.
And I think that would help us budget better and plan better if we knew, if we had the figures of how many cars are actually going through these intersections and using these roads.
Right. Mayor and Council, we collect such data every 2 years. As of right now, the latest data set we have is from 2019.
Yeah, late 2019.
Well, this is now 22, so
Correct.
everybody's here. They've all come home to roost because it's a winter, but it would be nice to know how the traffic pattern is, to see what we need to do.
That sounds really good. We can report the last number of counts citywide.
Thank you. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Stipp.
Samit and Hugh, thank you for the information. You know, I think what we see in this presentation tonight is a great example of reacting to a council retreat discussion. And it's us saying, well, this year we want this. And then next year we're going to have another retreat, and that's probably going to be something completely different. And, you know, we're asking the staff to react to this. So getting this updated transportation master plan, getting somebody who's coordinating that, I think is going to help bring some focus to us. And I will speak only for myself, but I know I carry a lot of water when it comes to this. I speak very passionately about transportation as we have each one of those retreats. And I looked at this list and said, yep, I complained about this one and I complained about this one. And then Wally jumped in, and then Wally complained about one, and I jumped on her boat for that. And so a lot of that is in here. And while I appreciate that, that's no way to run. It's no way to run the organization, and that's not a reflection on anybody. That's us. It shouldn't be a project by complaint. Should not be how we're doing it. So getting this forward look and getting somebody kind of in charge of the ship and moving that forward is a real positive step for us, I think, in a good direction. So thank you for all of that. I had geared myself up to come in with my list of traffic light complaints, but I have opted not to do that tonight. And I'm looking at this, and I looked at this presentation when we got it last week. I'm assuming that this is what's informing the CIP, so I'm going to look at the manager. And so this is not a, hey, council, what do you think? This is going to be in the CIP, and we're going to have that whole discussion later. Is that correct?
That's correct. So this was a preview of what our short-term plan looks like, and then also our long-term plan. So just like the compensation information, this information will help us, if we're hitting the mark, this will help us inform the recommended budget we bring back.
So if collectively tonight we say, oh my gosh, I don't want to spend 6.5, then you'll figure out how to pare it down. If we say, no, you need to spend $15 million, you'll figure that out too. But the recommendation coming from our professionals is the 6.5 moving forward. And, you know, I think we also have to look at capacity to get projects done, which ties up money. So, you know, for us, and probably more for, you know, our newest addition to the council and how we have to look at that. And I'm very happy with the list. I'm frustrated by the list only from the standpoint that we waited so long on some of these projects. The I-10, Estrella, Parkway, Pebble Creek, interchange, that whole thing, we are going to tear up that intersection and we are going to wreak absolute havoc. There's so much traffic in that area, and we are going to destroy that intersection. And man, if we had done that 5 years ago or longer, it probably wouldn't be as devastating as it's going to be right now. And that part is frustrating that, you know, we got behind. So to our newest team member, you got a lot of work cut out for you. So we don't have this 5 years from now. So the future council is not sitting here saying, man, I wish those people in 2022 had done a better job. So I'm excited about this. I have 2 full years, well, 22, 23, and all of 24. One day, this picture will become reality. It's not going to be a prayer anymore. I want to see one time when all the lights are green that you can see. But other than that, yeah. Well, you don't have to tell me to drive faster. You didn't hear that, Chief. Anyway, that's all I got. Thanks.
Councilmember Loretano.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. And I think just going through the list, you know, it's kind of like what Councilmember Stipp said. I can look and say, oh yeah, we need this, and oh, we need this, and oh, I was driving there and this one was backed up. And I don't know how we keep ahead. And I think that's probably for our new team member to figure out. And the plan is to, how can we get ahead? Because we're still playing catch up. I just had a couple quick questions. For the Estrella Bridge project, that's going to be the planning. Is that going to take into account any of the roadway around there, or where you turn off, what's that road you turn off? Coming down the hill, you turn off? Oh, Vineyard. I mean, is that going to solve the Vineyard issue? Because you've got people coming down that mountain, Chief, at like 65 miles an hour, 70, and then it goes into one, you don't get to come up there anymore. And then it goes down to one lane, and then people are trying to make that right turn, and you're just like, I don't know how many times I've seen somebody in that median. So I don't know if it's going to, are we going to build a bridge? Are we going to have the bridge for capacity and just leave the road tiny, or what are we doing with that?
Sure. No, Councilmember Loretano. What, on that project, Estrella Parkway over the Gila River Bridge, what that will do is add an additional structure, adding 2 additional lanes. And yes, it does widen from approximately Vineyard to just short of MC 85. So it will make that entire area, should be a continuous, I guess I should correct myself slightly. It will be 4 lanes, then up to approximately the Public Works admin or water wastewater facility.
Yeah.
That is the location of the future SR 30, just north of that facility. That's where the road will transition from 6 lanes to the north to 4 lanes to the south.
Okay.
That's the plan for that area.
Yeah, that'll help, because that is kind of this isn't the only part in our little area over there that it's bad. I know it's bad over at Yuma. I know, and I'm looking at all these where we have these scallop that kind of goes in and it goes out, and then you have people trying to beat it to get around. So as we look at more projects and if there's more federal money, I would love to make sure that we kind of, in the future, we don't allow these to become these little in and out, because then you have people basically acting like a racetrack trying to get ahead of the next guy. And then my other question is with your prayer picture there, it will never look like that because our trees are not going to be that green. But when we look at that, is there any way as a temporary solution, changing light timing or anything along those lines? Because there's several of these intersections that back up. I think Litchfield going on to Mcdowell, when you want to make that turn, everyone's shaking their heads. I know it. When making that turn, is there any quick fixes that we can explore while this is going to take time to build this, to get some of these intersections moving? Because you've got people hanging out and then that slows down and people can't get, and that's just one of many because we've got so many people. Is there any way we can do any sort of quick fixes as we do all this? And I'll leave that to you experts.
No, Mayor, members of council, yes, we are looking into the timing aspect. So going back to our fiscal year 2022 projects, one of them was an ITS project, one that involved Estrella, Public Creek Parkway, but also involved the purchase of a different centralized traffic signal system, which currently that system, we just started entering intersections into it on Friday. Now, not all of the functionality has been rolled out yet. It's still going to take probably at least another month, but we are rolling that out. And our hope is, again, that'll give us some more feedback on how it's operating. And also in our proposed fiscal year 2023 plan, we did have one project at Litchfield and Mcdowell, and that was an attempt to, or a project that will lengthen the westbound left turn lane, as that's currently definitely shorter than standard. We can't get the full length out of there, but we'll be able to add some additional feet to it to hopefully provide more storage and hopefully make that westbound through movement and the left turn work better than it does today.
Thank you, because that's the one I'm thinking of where you're kind of hanging out there and then the traffic is trying to just go around you and you have nowhere to go and it's very dangerous. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
No,
Vice Mayor
absolutely.
Hampton.
And I'm sorry. I would just add on that FY22 is the first time that we have brought these three new intelligent transportation system projects to Goodyear, and we are proposing 4 more in the coming year. So we are going from pretty much 0 to 7 very soon. So we'll start collecting data and then analyzing that data and then improving our traffic flow based on the information we collect.
Vice Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I do think it's a great project, and we do definitely have to think like the second fastest growing city. We can't think like a slower growing city. We have to keep pace with all this growth. So I appreciate the focused attention and looking at the data and then prioritizing all of these needs as they come up as well. So I know there'll be a lot of pain before we get the relief. A lot of traffic cones and things will be happening here. So, but I appreciate all that. So a question quickly on Saraville, south of Yuma, or south of Van Buren. Is that going to go south of Van Buren? You said go to Jefferson, but is that going to complete that widening of that road, that project for this year from Van Buren to Yuma? It looked like it would. I just wanted to verify.
This is the formerly Bennett Meadows.
I think the project is called, and that's in this CIP, I think it's this CIP, from, I think it's called Jefferson to Yuma on Saraville. I don't forget what project number it is. I'm looking at the individual slides, trying to find the right one.
Yeah, that's it was in, that's, yes, you're correct, Mayor, members of council. That was, it involved 2 private projects. One was Bennett Meadows, the other was Innovation Villas. That project had gone back and forth as a fully funded CIP with reimbursement, and then, you want to take it?
On that project, it has been a bit of a challenge for actually years now. We have been trying to coordinate with the private developers, 2 of them. One was Bennett Meadows. Now they have been purchased by Merida. They are now called Merida Crossing. And like you mentioned that we reduced the scope of our CIP project because the developers were moving really fast. So it has been a little bit of just unfortunate situation where developers sometimes move really quickly. So we held back on the CIP side, but then they stopped. So then by the time we get our wheels in motion, then the developers start moving again. So moving forward, we are trying to reduce that independence and the codependence that we have had with the development community, because we want our problems to be solved. We want our roadways to be built. We don't want scalloped streets anymore. So with the approvals from the council, we are planning to use the cost recovery ordinance on our future projects. Cerevel, we thought that we were going to let these developers finish their obligation, and then we would come. The portion that the city of Goodyear is now responsible for is substantially lesser, so our scope would be reduced substantially. But it was also contingent upon the developers doing their part, because we could not put the median improvements or the traffic signal before they did their roadway improvements. So we just found ourselves in a position of the same old hostage situation as in the past. But right now we hear that Innovation Villas is now moving forward quickly. So we'll just wait for them to just finish their sale transaction, and then we'll work with the new owners.
So when will that be completed, you thinking?
Right now, I don't remember the timeline, but I believe that it was somewhere in 23 when we would finish all our work, because we were just waiting for the developers to finish their part first by the end of 22.
Okay, and is there any, I didn't see the project for this, is there anything like a left turnout around that Fry's down there, or as Christian calls it, the fancy Fry's there, Yuma and
You mean coming out of the gas
Cerevel.
station?
either side, it's hard to take any left turns
Oh, I know.
out of that plaza to begin with. I don't know if there's any thoughts around that. I know when I drive down there to go grocery shopping, it's extremely difficult, and it's very popular of location. And I know there's more ECDEV activities going to be on the opposite kitty corner of that as well. And with Vanderbilt Farms not being completely widened either. So it's just a harder intersection or area to get out of. So I'm just curious if there was any plans for that.
Yeah, Mayor, members of council, regarding the area around the Fry's Marketplace, so getting back to Cerevel is a minor arterial. So the ultimate configuration, once these projects near Bennett Meadows and Innovation Villas are complete, that'll make Cerevel Avenue 2 lanes northbound and southbound, and it'll be median divided. On Yuma Road, that is currently one of our fiscal year 2022 projects, currently designed. It was also approved for construction. Construction, I think, is probably 1 or 2 years away. So on that one improves Yuma Road to its ultimate width. And also included in that, we have the warranted traffic signal at 165th Avenue and Yuma, which would be the western end of Fry's Marketplace, near where the AutoZone is, and then the 165th, which extends south into Vanderbilt Farms. That'll make that intersection signalized.
Very good.
Regarding the left turn out, what you're speaking of, it's a very short distance from Cerevel and Yuma.
Yeah.
Just to the north. The issue with that location is, per our current standards, we would not be able to install a traffic signal at that location because it does not meet the minimum separation requirements, which is typically 1/4 mile.
Yeah.
I think
And that's fine.
Okay.
Just as long as there's a future light somewhere to get that entire plaza would be nice. I don't expect to be super close to the next light. So that plaza will need a light here in the future. So I appreciate that that's going to be coming here. And then I know this isn't in here as well. I mean, at the end of the day, I want all the roads complete right now, but that's not going to happen. So I know that's why we have priorities and things in place. So, but there's no, how far out is Cerevel all the way to MC85? Widening, and I know it's just not a major arterial, but I was just curious.
I believe that Cerevel Avenue from Elwood to Yuma, I believe, is an IIP project, because the western half, so the eastern side of Cerevel is improved in that segment. The west side of the road is, partially adjacent to Vanderbilt Farms.
Yeah.
Once you're south of Vanderbilt Farms, it's County Island. So that's why that portion I believe, is in the IIP. Then there's a small piece down toward between MC 85 and Elwood. That is slightly more complicated because there are some APS overhead power lines on the east side. And some of that is also developable on the east side. I don't believe that is in the IIP, but I'd have to verify and check that.
I mean, obviously, we want every road perfect and as widened as possible, so I know there has to be priorities in place. So I appreciate you working on it. And like I said, I know we need to, I like the greater attention on our traffic because we need this to be one of our biggest jobs, I think, for the city is keeping pace with our infrastructure and demands with the huge amount of growth that's coming. So I appreciate, your attention on Saraville, and I also appreciate you looking at it even off of Citrus. I know some of the more development's going to be coming out there, and the light out there, and the project we just approved out there as well. So yeah, that's what I got. Thank you.
Councilmember Kano?
It's been interesting to watch the progression of our discussion from the council retreat to today. And at the retreat, we were talking about what we're hearing from residents. They want more retail, restaurants, and oh, by the way, the traffic and the lights are problematic. And obviously, there's no shortage of projects, and they're all worthy projects and will have to be done. I guess that's the matter of timing. And to Councilmember Stipp's point, if everything you put off then creates a problem as well. So I think this is conversations that are probably going to bleed into our budget conversations as well. I do have a question about the traffic signals and the intelligent transportation projects, because you mentioned the centralized system, and then I've heard about things that you're going to go light by light. So I just had envisioned you've got your big master board, you're programming everything, but that's obviously not the case. Could you just give me some clarification?
Sure. So on the ITS projects, that's a competitive selection process through MAG. I'm going to say roughly 2 to 3 years, there's a call for projects with MAG it's part of the MAG Intelligent Transportation Systems Committee. What we're able to submit are mostly ITS or intelligent transportation systems or technology projects to improve traffic flow. And those come from a specific fund, again, funded by the federal government. So what it is, it's a competitive submittal. Again, it's all entities in the MAG region submit projects. They are ranked, and then if they rank above what we call the cut line, the funding line, then they are then approved through various committees of MAG, and then they are considered approved projects. So currently, we have what was mentioned here, existing, we have 3 projects, I'm sorry, thank you. 3 projects. So currently in fiscal 22, the ones we're working on now is the first one I mentioned, the Estrella Parkway project and the improvements to the traffic management center, software-wise. The other project we had was it'd be similar to ones that we're proposing for fiscal 23, which is the revision of the traffic signal equipment. And the first project would be Litchfield Road from Airport to Wigwam, which was, I believe, 15 or 16 intersections. And then there's the third project, Mcdowell Road, from State Route 303 to the signal that's a quarter-mile west of Dysart. We refer to as Palm Valley Cornerstone. Those are the ITS projects we have that we're currently working on today that are in construction. Again, those are fiscal 22. The projects we have proposed here for fiscal 23, we've already submitted those to MAG. They have been approved. It's just a matter of, again, working through the MAG process and, of course, the city CIP process, because there is a match that's involved. But those projects have been approved by MAG, and those were the 4 projects listed that were Van Buren Street, Yuma Road, Indian School, and
That's okay. I think I have the gist of it. So there's really nothing that we can do independently then? I mean, everything depends on what we do with MAG, or?
Not necessarily. The MAG projects are great projects to upgrade entire intersections at a time. So when we're able to select corridors that meet the MAG criteria, they also have to meet certain criteria. Sometimes it's traffic volumes, sometimes it's a classification of the street. There's various criteria we have to meet at MAG. We also have, working for us on the city side, is the asset management, we call the asset management equipment replacement program for traffic signals, which is very beneficial as well, that we're able to upgrade. Again, it usually revolves around, I believe this year was around $1.3, $1.4 million. That covers a lot of various traffic signal equipment as well. Not just the technology side, but also like the red, yellow, green indications, improving the luminaires, traffic signal structure painting. It covers a lot of different areas. And now we're up to approximately 104, 105 traffic signals. So once you consider how many traffic signals we have in the city, that funding goes a long way to keeping our traffic signal infrastructure maintained.
Well, then I just want to agree with Councilmember Loretano about the things, though, that we can fix in terms of timing and things like that for our lights and getting traffic cleared safely through. Just seeing so much red light running because people are impatient, and I think it would help. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bree?
This is where I go through my list of complaints on the traffic. No, thank you guys. Appreciate it. You've got a tall order ahead of you. I think looking at the fiscal side, and obviously when we get into the budget, we'll see more of that. You know, we have to balance a whole budget, but I could easily see us spending double to get caught up and ahead of what's going on out there, especially with growth. I mean, all these projects have to get done some way, somehow. Just a question there, you had mentioned Yuma Road and then putting in the light there at 165th, and there's a whole plan for Yuma Road there, but it could be up to 2 years before we see Yuma Road completed.
Yes, I'm not sure of the exact construction timeline. We just began the design with a consultant. We just got them on board, and we just received, I believe it was 15% plans last month. So we're still moving through the design process. Again, don't quote me. I think it's going to be between, I want to say 1.5 to 2 years. I think it's closer to 1.5 on the completion of design and moving into construction.
Yeah. Well, there's plenty of challenges ahead of you guys, and I think maybe just one of the things that as we think through this pattern and building this infrastructure, right, is there a way to help mitigate against the impact so that we don't feel like we're in construction for the next 5 years, right? And that's a tough thing to do. I don't know how to do that, but I look at Yuma and Saraville, the intersection there. Now it's just design at the moment, but it's being overrun currently with traffic just because of what they're doing on Jackrabbit and all that on I-10. So just some thought in that, you know, because a lot of people are going to start getting off more and more. I know when I come home at 303, you know, it's already starting to back up and people are trying to exit wherever they can, and then they use our arterial roads to get to Buckeye, right? And so if there's some temporary solutions we can also use to help relieve that while they're doing that construction, I think we should be looking at that as well. But I mean, overall, a good plan and good luck, I guess.
Vice Mayor?
I just wanted to bring it up, this is really more for the city manager, but with the infrastructure bill from the federal government that came down and it's just come back from DC and talking about that, when the grants come out for that money, are we running, I'm sure we're running all our projects through that to try to get as much federal money if possible for the bridge, especially for some of these projects coming up. So I just want to make sure we take advantage of any opportunities there, and someone's keeping an eye on that.
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor. Absolutely. So we're keeping our eyes not only on the federal opportunities. We do understand about 60% of that will be funneled through the states. So we'll be watching for opportunities at the federal level, but also through the state system. We're always working through MAG and seeing what local dollars are also available. And of course, this session, we have a couple of requests of the state legislature to also assist with some of our transportation projects. So we are actively looking for all opportunities.
Thank you.
You know, I want to rehash a lot of good discussion, and I guess the traffic manager's got his work cut out for him. I'm really appreciative of trying to get rid of these scallop streets throughout the city. People are cutting through neighborhoods to try to avoid those scallop streets. I know if we put it in, we can set up something to get reimbursed from the development community when they come in. Hindsight's always 20/20, but, as Councilmember Stipp had mentioned, the longer we wait to get ahead of this, the worse it's going to get. I guess for your job as the traffic manager is to make the minimal impact on people's lives with all of these different projects going on is really going to be a challenge. But the quicker we get ahead of this, the better off we're going to be. So, I'm glad that we're moving in this direction because traffic as we grow is going to be a real challenge. And you can see it every day. Just trying to get up Litchfield Road is amazing itself, let alone any place else throughout the city. So please, I'm looking forward to our budget discussions we get into there. And I think it's worthwhile getting these roads done to mitigate this and also the scallop streets as well. So I appreciate all the presentation, appreciate your effort all the way in here. And with that, anybody else final comments?
I have one question, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Can you tell me how much each traffic signal cost when we put it in? It used to be $495,000. What is it today?
Considerably more than that today.
I
Mayor,
know, that's
Councilman.
why I'm asking.
Yeah, I believe our last estimates, again, we have two different types of traffic signal structures in the city. We have our modular, the more square type.
The big one?
Yes. That structure, I believe our last estimate put it in the neighborhood of 900,000. That includes material and labor, construction, everything that comes with it.
And then what about the skinny one?
Yeah, and the ADOT style structures, I believe it was closer to, I think, just under 800,000. Again, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but
Both the same?
yeah, it's slightly less. It's about $150,000 less. Don't have the numbers in front of me.
I thought it was really a lot more because we put some of those signal lights up and just painted them brown and we didn't even notice them.
No, you're correct, Councilmember Campbell. What happened is ADOT changed their standard roughly 3-4 years ago. Now, when they changed their standard, it was due to various engineering criteria, wind loading, whatever. The standards changed. ADOT upgraded their poles with them. When they did that, requires more material. It's a much heavier structure than what it used to be, and that's what raised the cost. And that's what the vendors tell us. A good example to look at, the first one I believe we installed that was that style was at 173rd in Yuma. Also, what plays into that cost is also the size of the intersection. Clearly, an intersection at 173rd and Yuma would cost slightly less to do, let's say, an arterial intersection such as Litchfield and Mcdowell, just because the mast arms are longer. They're much heavier duty poles for the bigger the intersection is because they have to reach further out over traffic. So there's a lot of, a few parameters that play into that cost as well.
Are we waiting until we have more development on Bullard and Yuma? Because we have those temporary lights.
That,
Either one's okay. I don't care who answers. Go ahead.
yep. Bullard and Yuma was on our list. It's, I believe now, as it stands today, there's development on 3 of the 4 corners.
There is, yes.
It was on our list for consideration, just when we did our ranking process of warranted traffic signals. That did not make the cut, but it's something we would look at the next CIP cycle.
Well, I would hope that the developers chip in because they're the ones that are bringing the big buildings in and we're going to have the employees in there. And they should pay their share of that intersections, whatever. But it would be nice if we had that on our radar because that's been there forever. And when the ballpark is in full swing, it's a very busy street there. So.
I think you got somebody here who wants to answer.
Yes, sir. Mayor, Councilwoman Campbell, thank you. Sorry, Mike, got congestion today, so sorry for that, if I sound funny. Hugh is correct. 3 of the 4 corners right now have activity. The 4th corner has a zoning case that's coming to council at the end of this month. And there are stipulations on each one of those corners, so that will be the city's collecting the revenue from those projects as they move forward in their construction cycle. So that will be developer funded and solved.
Okay, so once the 4th one is done, we'll get all that money together and put a light in. We don't have to wait for the CIP, huh? Because we've already collected the money from 3. I mean, That's what I'm thinking.
Where the stipulations of ththose projects are that they are making in lieu payments because they all came in at separate times.
Yeah.
So we are collecting that money that will be available.
Good. Okay, great, thank you. And then we don't really have to budget for it because we know it's paid for.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, to that point, we will have a CIP project as such since we'll be building, doing the construction, but most of the money would have been already collected in the form of in-lieu payments. And as Christopher alluded to, many times in our city's growth, we have got some funds, but say some developer came on one corner, we got 25% of the then cost of the traffic signal. So they paid us what we told them, but that may not be quite sufficient in today's dollars. So we might end up requesting some money because we cannot go back to them anymore.
Gave them a different figure than it is now, so I
Exactly.
understand.
So there's a chance that we might request some additional funding just because we did not collect enough, which has been a woe from the past.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the presentation. And we have a final one on the agenda come up for discussion. Potential fiscal year 2023 revenue policy. Thank you. Please, oh, right, does anybody want about a 5 or 10 minute break? Want a break? Anybody? All right, how about 10 minutes? Meet back at 6:40.
Sorry,
Cozy? I guess we can, I didn't break, well, we can go ahead and get started. Introduce yourself there, Doug. Go.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Doug Sandstrom, Finance Director. I am here before you this evening to just kind of lead off on a fiscal policy discussion. On the February 28th council meeting, council requested this work session so that you guys could have this discussion this evening. The presentation I put together really is to continue that council conversation that we've had before at the retreats as well as the 228 council meeting. The intent of these slides is just to provide you a few facts on a few different items that have been brought up to staff before that council has expressed some interest in discussing and making recommendations on. So we do not have staff recommendations on these. Just as I said, more data to help spur the conversation. As I'm going through these, you can see here the three concepts that we have on here. I can stop after each slide to let council discuss that specific one, or I can go through the entire thing as well and then just come back around to it. For the way I'll start is stopping on each one, and we can always come back to them as we go along. So one of the items that has been brought up by council in the past is the elimination of the food for home consumption portion of the sales tax. Currently, food for home consumption in the city is at 2% with a rate drop discussion of 2% down to 0%. What the impact of that would be in the 23 budget is $5.3 million of ongoing annual revenue would be removed from the budget for fiscal year 23. Overall, in our 5-year forecast that was presented to council in February, we project that this source grows by about 5% annually. One of the discussion points was to eliminate the tax, but phase in the impact of it by using construction sales tax at $1 million reduced each year so that we start to grow into that lost revenue. So those are just some of the background and facts on that for the impact for fiscal year 23. We did a little bit of a comparison of other cities to see how they treat the food for home consumption. Of the 17 valley cities that we looked at, 3 of the 17 do not charge food for home consumption. So the majority do. The ones that do not are Phoenix, Surprise, and Mesa. Of the 14 that do charge the food for home consumption tax, it's an average rate of 2.2%, which is higher than the city's current rate of 2%. The high is Buckeye and El Mirage at 3.5. Low is Chandler and Gilbert at 1.5 with varying rates in between. 3 cities, Goodyear, Glendale, and Peoria, actually do have a lower rate for food for home consumption than their standard tax rate, and we are one of those. So with that, I will open it up for council to have some discussion.
Let's start it off. Gary?
I know this keeps coming back every couple of years, and it sounds very nice. When you hear it, it sounds like, oh, we're going to do something really great. But I remember a couple years ago, we actually did a study on this, on how much it actually saves a family, because this isn't off your total food bill. And I think people need to remember this also doesn't include, you know, your laundry detergent, your medications, your dog, everything else that goes in that basket, your paper goods. It's only specific food. And we also have to make sure that we understand that a lot of this revenue is coming from non-Goodyear residents who are coming into our city, who shop here, that don't live here. So I think it was approximately $1 or $1.10 a month when they ran the numbers. It ran between 90 cents or $1, $1.10 a month, that we would actually save a Goodyear family on their bill. And that's where I'm kind of against this, because now that we're looking at a 5.3, although you're moving this, you're still losing $5.3 million. We are losing $5.3 million. You can phase in construction sales tax, but that doesn't make money 5.3 extra appear. So I think a lot of times politicians will say, this is really great, and I got rid of the food tax, and it's really going to help you. When I look at it, I say, my $1.10, your $1.10, your $1.10, we put that all $1.10 together, and then we get that 5.3 and we fix a road. we add a traffic light, we add a police officer, we add a fire truck. When I look at the conglomerative or a cohesive effort of all the little dollar tens that we add up, I think that's a better for our citizens to say, yes, we have it, but this is what we're spending it on. And I don't mean we necessarily say dollar for dollar. I think there was some confusion when we talked about this. I'm not saying, well, we have to say dollar for dollar, this is where we spent that. But I think we look at it as part of our budget, that we plan it well and we plan it for our citizens well. Like I said, I know this comes back and it's a really great thing for people to get up there, and I'm not running on anything ever again, ever. So I will tell you, I think it's a bad fiscal move. I think it's for politicians to pat themselves on their back and say, "Woo, aren't we great?" Because when you look at the big picture, we have to look at how we can help everybody with that money and help our city grow better with the 100,000 people that are here. Also, then you get to the argument is, well, our personal hygiene items, should those be taxable? Well, no, those are a necessity. Well, what about diapers? What about formula? What about prescriptions? What about water? What about air conditioning or your electric? So there's a lot of things that are necessities, but I think it's our job to make sure that we have it lower than everybody else's pretty much. We have a good rate, and I don't think we really want to take a $5.3 million hit that we can actually use to fix a street and get us a fire truck, get us some police officers, public safety, a library, books. I mean, there's just so many needs that we have in this growing city that I'm not for it, and I will get off my soapbox and thus I get back on it later.
Go ahead, Councilmember Campbell.
I just think Sherry said it really well. And the fact that we do have a lower than average, lower than our peers and lower than our retail tax. And I was thinking the same thing. Certainly, we have so many shoppers that don't live in Goodyear who are contributing, and they're using our roads and everything, running our lights. And I think you said it very well.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
No, I also agree. I mean, like I said, we're not even an outlier compared to other cities as well. And the only thing we really are an outlier on is the restaurant tax. So that's where we're I think one of the higher ones. So I don't think this is something I want to get rid of for all the reasons that Councilwoman Loretano said as well. If you want to do something, I think it'd be a different bucket, but not this necessarily this bucket here. So yeah.
So did we talk about this at the retreat? I wasn't at the retreat, so that's why I'm asking, because I don't know what y'all talked about. Because we seem to bring this up every year, and it seems to float around.
It was brought up earlier. 3 people wanted to talk about it, so that's why we're talking about it. So
Okay.
do you have anything?
Well, I just, I can't add any more than what Councilmember Laurentano added. We only have so few revenues that gives us money to run this city. Now, if you go get me at Costco, I'll think about it differently. But we need revenue streams, and I just don't want us to take a $5 million hit, because we don't know what the economy's going to be like in 5 years or 4 years or 3 years, and we may need that money. So we've been through one terrible recession, and we may have another one. So.
Let me try. Councilmember Bray?
It's hard to necessarily just opine on one tax issue, being the newest member on this council. In general, I hear what the other council members are saying and respect that decision. I just never think that it's a good idea to necessarily tax food, but that's coming and looking at it through an agricultural perspective. It's something that we've never, from an industry perspective, never really appreciated, but understand that, we have to balance a whole city and figure out where, maybe if we lose that revenue there, how do we make it up? Aside from that, I hear what Councilwoman Campbell has said about, where we're going with the economy, but think we should keep in mind, looking at tax policy, that I think it's getting tougher and tougher for families in general. And it probably will start getting tougher on those that have a fixed income with inflation. And so I think as we develop tax policy or look at tax policy on the book, we should just think about what our residents are facing as well.
Councilmember Stipp.
Well, we're talking about this because I brought it up at the retreat, and we'll bring it up again. In 2009, we turned to the residents and said, hey, we're facing this recession. Let us raise the sales tax rate from 2% to 2.5 because we really need it. And residents said, sure, we love what's happening in the city. We can move that forward. Today, we're in the opposite situation. We have a tremendous amount of revenues coming in from multiple sources. We are receiving sales tax from places that when we started in 2009 didn't exist. Internet sales and data centers and all the rest of that. So to Councilmember Bray's point, we now have the opportunity to provide some relief to people today facing potentially some coming out of the pandemic, and we're clearly in inflationary times and we don't know what the cause of that is. We will always be threatened with, we don't know what the future is going to bring. We've been saying that for 10 years. We don't know what the future is going to bring. And every year it gets better here. Every year we are adding more and more employees. Every year we are adding more and more programs. The money is, I don't want to say infinite, but it is pretty plentiful. We saw that from the presentation that Doug and the rest of the finance team did back in January. The cost to the city is very minimal. If you look at our $600+ million budget, $5 million, that we can actually use another resource to offset that until it balances out within 5 years is pretty minimal. The impact to the family, yeah, maybe $1, it may be more. And the people that are paying the food tax are the residents. They're the renters, they're the owners, they're the people that live here. Sure, we may get some people coming in from outside of the city to buy their groceries here, but if you look around us, most of our grocery stores are probably being serviced by, or they're going to service more residents than they are anything else. The retail is a whole different story. 8 cities are above us. 8 cities are below us. Some are 0 and some are not, if you look at the chart. And if you look at that chart where the city of Goodyear sits that accompanied this presentation, we are at the top of most all of the charts in sales tax revenue. Now, we can do some amazing things with that money, and I'm the first to promote all of the things we've been able to do for the people. And for us to sit here and say, well, we need $5 million because we can buy a fire truck or we can hire people. Yeah, we'll always use $5 million. But for us to be able to turn this back and benefit our residents, and some are lowest income, that dollar may be important, and it's $1 a week. It would be, if you have a $100 bill and it's 2%, that's $2. You figure half of that bill is food. Just raw numbers, just keep the math simple. If it's $1 a week, that's $50 a year. Sure, it's not a lot of money. But for some folks, it may be a bigger deal. We don't know. And for us to sit here and say, well, we've got 19 million of construction sales tax, and we've got 163 million of this. Boy, I'm not really sure how we're going to spend this other 5 million. It really, it's kind of the epitome of government gone wild. Now, I said to the manager, and I said to Doug, and I've said to probably every single client that I have ever consulted with, never turn back a revenue source that you have. Just don't do it. but I have also never consulted with a community that is growing and is increasing its revenues at the capacity and the speed at which we are. So yeah, so anybody who would ever had listened to me tell them, don't give back revenue, I would generally agree with that. But in this particular case, I think we're making a huge mistake. But everybody has spoken, and I always support whatever the majority of the group is. And that's the benefit and the beauty of what we have done collectively is we all have opinions and we all get to share them. And I thought about just sitting here silently as I heard the majority speak. Well, why hear from the opposition? But I think it's important for us to continue to have this discussion, and I think it's important for the community and the people that are listening to this, and then we'll view this tape, to hear everybody on this council say they would rather have the money than turn it back, because that's essentially what you're saying tonight.
Wait a minute. Oh, go ahead.
First of all, I disagree with your math because I've actually also gone through my own bills, and when I start taking off the stuff that doesn't apply, it doesn't always work out that way. So that's just what the city manager before Julie went through and kind of gave us an estimate. We also, on Wally's point, if you heard the Federal Reserve speak today, that they are looking for a recession, they're looking for inflation that is very high. We also have to look at our streets, that $5 million. You're not replacing it, it will not be replaced. That is, money is gone. So you're using that other money could have still been used for one-time expenses. We have streets, we have gas tax that is higher. The governor just recently said he is not going to stop the gas tax for one of the same reasons. It's because we need it to fix our roads. So realistically, if we use this money to fix some of those roads, and we've just talked about how much money is needed in that last presentation for some of these roads, if you can move people through faster, you are going to save them more money to get them where they want to go. They're going to save gas. They're going to be able to drive where they want to go. So I think it's a holistic approach. And if we just look at what it's going to save me this week, I don't think that's what we look. I think you want to look at the holistic approach. We fix these roads. We get people where they want to go. They're not sitting through 2 and 3 lights. They're not burning $5 a gallon gas for 2 to 3 lights. We make sure that we get the companies here so that I can work close to home, so I can have that job close to home, so I can get that apartment, so I can have an apartment where my family can go to the park close to home. So I think it's a building thing. I think it'd be great if we didn't have to tax food, we didn't have to tax water, we didn't have to tax electricity. But that unfortunately is not the world we live in. We only have so many revenue streams, and we don't get them from the state. We do have to collect them, but it's our job to make sure that we spend it for our citizens so that they can get the best bang for their buck, and so that we improve their lives with the money we have. We don't waste it, we spend it for them. So that's my final, I'll be quiet now.
Yeah, I have a tendency to agree with Councilmember Loretano and the others in there. Here's the concerns I have. There's a lot of unknown out there, number one. I recall many years ago when we did a license plate survey on some of our facilities that there's a significant amount of people. That's why our per capita sales tax numbers are the way they are. We have a lot of people shopping here in Goodyear that don't live in Goodyear. And also, do people remember, it's been a while, a couple of years, where the state wanted to get rid of construction sales tax, and they wanted to put the tax, like a lot of states do, on the personal property for home consumption. I mean, so that would be taxed. If they ever would finally be able to do that, that would be devastating to us, because we don't have those hardware stores and those stores where you would get the tax from those end sales. You know, every time you turn around, there's something down there at the legislature you got to be a little, in my view, we got to be a little leery of. And I think the small dollars that goes into the food itself, and you're looking at as the total, a lot of that money help pay for our rec center operations. It's going to help pay for some of the things that come forward when we open up our new Civic Plaza, the roads, you know, all of those pieces go into place. And I think, to, like Councilmember Stipp mentioned earlier, you don't hit your base, you don't reduce the base that you have. I'm a firm believer in that, because Phoenix several years ago did get rid of its food tax, and the following year, if I'm not mistaken, they had a bit of problem trying to balance that budget. They had some shortfalls, because once you lose it, you're not getting it back. It's done. It's over with. So I'm for keeping it. I can appreciate if there's ways for us to try to save some money and get it back into the community. You know, we have fees we charge to our residents that you can probably do some work there to lower if you would like. I like to see it in the roads. I think the congestion going forward is going to be one of our biggest challenges out there right now. And if we don't get a handle on that, we're going to get gridlock here pretty quickly. That's where I'd like to see a lot of it go, on these scallop streets, to try to get traffic moving throughout the city. But I think there are ways to get that back in there. And you know me, I'm never set on this property tax rate itself. If we pay more cash for some of our projects, we can actually lower our debt service, okay, as opposed to borrowing money. So again, this is some of my 2 cents worth on there, and I'll pass at that and let the finance director move on.
Thank you. With that discussion, we will move forward with the budget with the food for sales tax staying as is. One of the other items that we looked at under that same genre is the dedication of general fund revenue for transit. Current item in the financial policy is most restrictive funding is used for us first. So if we ever were to dedicate a revenue for something specific, that would be where the first dollar would come from, is from that dedicated source. Currently, some existing city restrictions, for example, are asset management funds. Council has said that we are going to have asset management funds. When we do the budget process, that is the very first thing that we fund before anything else, because that restriction in the financial policies. Were we to put one in place for transit or some other purpose, it would go the exact same route, where that would be the first area that we would go after.
Anybody want to start off on that? Councilmember Kano? Campbell?
Well, I'm not sure that I want to dedicate a portion of the general fund for transit, truthfully. I think that might be something we need to ask the residents. Do you want a half-cent sales tax to go to transit or whatever? Because we're not going to be able to provide very much transit the way our city is developing, and we can't have our own bus company, and we can't work with Valley Metro very well. Well, I mean, we can work with them. It's just they're so terribly expensive. I'm not in favor of dedicating a portion of the general fund for transit right now, unless that's what we're already doing. Are we doing that?
We are not.
Okay, I didn't think so. But
Vice Mayor?
I guess, can you define me what that money would be used for? What transit, is that different modals of transportation, like she's mentioning, like bus routes and the expansion of that Goodyear Uber type program, or it's not roads and infrastructure like we were talking in the last, is that correct?
For the purposes, what we have up here is for transit. One of the first steps, if council wanted to dedicate revenue for transit, one of the first things we'd come back to council with is a definition of exactly what transit means. But what you talked about right there, whether microtransit, the Zoom route, for example, buses, that would be what the intent would be, but we would come back for a full definition of it.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'd be okay if we're dedicating for a time money towards more roads and making these projects, fast tracking some of the projects that that the team's already demonstrated that they're working on already. But I'm not sure about like a transit tax or that's a whole different thing. But those different modes of transportation, I think that's already being addressed in other budget items, I believe. Am I on the same page? Does that sound correct?
Right now, like for the transportation items that we were just talked about on the item before that, that's something that would come forward in the budget, and it would be competing against other general fund activities and so forth, rather than a dedicated portion. And that's what the budget process is all about, is allocating resources to what council feels is the number one priority.
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with transport infrastructure, maybe having its own dedicated funding source for a time for like the roads and things like that. Maybe not necessarily transit. So if we even want to go that route. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. If I could just add a little bit of context. This piece of the conversation came up with respect to if we were to ever, as a city, consider going out and asking our residents for a new tax. Transit is something that would be ripe for that. Some might say public safety. I mean, there's a couple of different categories where you could go back to your voters and ask for additional dollars. So the concept here was, instead of going out and asking for additional dollars, we instead look inside what we're already collecting and dedicate that money specifically for that purpose. So I just wanted to add that kind of contextual clarification as to, how this item arose during the retreat.
Councilmember Loretano?
Obviously, we are far behind some of the East Valley cities with our transit. We are very far behind. I would like to get more information on, kind of like the city manager was saying, how do they develop that? If they have a separate tax, what do they tax for that? How much do they tax? Do they take it from their general fund? And what's percentages? And then do they work together? Councilmember Stipp probably knows a lot of this because you're on Valley Metro. I don't know all those ins and outs. If they're taking it from the general fund, what do they use it for? Do they work with their neighboring cities? Is it a cooperative, or just kind of how this all works? It's an intriguing idea because obviously transit is something. It goes with the roads and the transportation. But we're not all by ourselves here. So how do we build on what we have? And then how would we fund those different areas? I just like to get more information because I really don't know a lot about this process and how it would best work.
Councilmember Stipp?
I'm not going to completely answer the question, only because I'll technically get it wrong. But a lot of the regional transportation or transit is funded partly by Prop 400, and that for us is going to be Route 17 and Route 3, the route along Mcdowell and the route along Van Buren. Those are funded with Prop 400 monies. Anything else is funded locally, and every jurisdiction has their regional lines that run through. But that's where the cooperation kind of ends. Majority of the cities have some form of local funding mechanism, whether it be general fund or in most of the cities, and I'm going to say most, and I don't know if that's 9 out of 10 or if that's 10 out of 20, but I'm going to say most of the cities have a transit tax that then funds some of the activities. Tempe, for example, they have a local tax, which is then giving them their streetcar and all the buses and all the rest of that, which is clearly what you would expect in a college town. Not anything that I think we would expect here. The question, and it even came up during the micro transit discussion when I had said to the manager, well, if this thing works, she's going to have to figure out how to pay for it, which is, it's a blessing and a curse, because the blessing is we had a great program and it's met some needs, so therefore we have to service it. The curse is we have to find a way to service it. So in the course of the conversation at the retreat, it was, okay, so we don't want to do any tax, return to the resident. Maybe we have a way, we find a way to start funding some of our transit needs. We're getting started. We have some idea of what we think we may need. Maybe this microtransit is the answer for the smaller areas. We know that we want to try to move people from Estrella down to the center part of the city, to just use that as an example. But we have dead revenue miles the minute that you leave, you come south of Elliott all the way till you get to the rec campus or the ballpark. Those are dead revenue miles. So that will always be an expensive route for us. So the question, and I think to your point, Councilmember Loretano, is let's find out what everybody else is doing. Let's find out what we think we're at. I think we all have this conversation. People are like, well, we're going to get light rail? Oh my God, light rail's like, $1 billion a mile. So, we don't want that kind of transit here in the city. But what do we need, and what do people want? We think we know what they want, but if you look at the history and the way that folks drive around, they're not driving like they want public transportation. They want the freedom to be able to move around. Even the folks, we constantly use Cantamia as an example. Look, we've got the retirement community way at the south end. Boy, those people could sure use some public transportation. Well, I don't know that those folks really want public transportation, But we have this issue, and we've spent a number of minutes, an hour, talking about transportation and all the congestion and the gridlock. Well, one of the best ways to relieve that is public transportation. So we have to have this discussion at some point, and whether we bounce the ball to the manager's lap and say, if this stuff takes off, you got to figure it out, or we buck up and say, we want to start dedicating some of our revenues in that direction. It's one or the other.
I know where there's 5.3 million.
Yeah, we know where 5.3 is, and I'm fine with that if that's what we say we're going to do with it, but that's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, that was kind of the genesis of where this conversation came from. It wasn't to determine tonight how we were going to fund transit or whatever, but it was just to drive this conversation, because much like everything else, 5 years from now or 3 years from now, we're going to be sitting here saying, oh my God, well, now we've got to fund microtransit, whatever that looks like. And we don't have the ability to do it. And Wally, you're right, Valley Metro right now is very expensive because the labor costs are very expensive. Because Valley Metro has stuck with the buses go everywhere theory. And I think with the change of some of our leadership and what's happening in society moving forward, that may rapidly change. And if it does, where does the city of Goodyear fit in that picture? And right now, we have Route 17 and we have Route 3. That's it. Yeah. And if that's all we're satisfied with, then this conversation dies just like the last one. But if we're not, then we need to buckle up and be prepared for the ride. And now I'm off my soapbox.
Councilmember Bray.
I feel like I need to start developing a soapbox.
You're on your own.
I guess in general, I think when you start to dedicate funds, we should just be cautious about it, because I don't think you want to get stuck and create inflexibility with your monies, right? Especially with not knowing what might happen. I think it's a worthwhile discussion, and maybe, Mr. Stipp feels like it's now. I think it's a little bit premature on transit stuff. I think people moving to Goodyear are used to driving and getting around themselves. So really, I would be cautious with just putting a dedicated source to anything, especially with so much going on today. It's a lot of needs with actual road infrastructure and lights and all of that. But I mean, who knows what happens to the economy? It could be something else, at the same time next year. So that's just kind of a general rule of thumb for me. And I think if we were to go down that route of dedicating a revenue source, I think it would be important to put in there some sort of a sunset review that at 3 years, 5 years, whatever it might be, that at least that council, whoever it might be, it's pinged to look at again, and is that an appropriate policy decision moving forward?
Mayor, yes?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. All right, thank you. I appreciate the additional discussion. It helped to put this whole thing in context. Certainly, I don't think any of us are interested in adding a new tax. And the transit discussions have been so interesting. Certainly, we've learned that bus ridership's down, even the express buses going downtown. I used to ride that, ridership's down. Even speaks to our first work session topic, how are employees working, or do you see changes in trends? So I think our micro transit project is very sound. It's going to be very telling to see how that works and what the costs and expenses are. And I think after we get some traction with that, then we're probably going to be in a better position to know what kind of dollars we're talking and what will it take to expand. So I think this is a conversation we need to continue to have, but I'm not ready to make any decision on it, particularly right now.
All right, the only thing I'd like to add is I tend to agree with Councilmember Bray. I mean, if you're going to have something dedicated, first of all, you better have a plan on what your dedication's for. So that means a thought-out process of what you're going to be using it for. So without having that, you just don't set money aside on X unless you have a plan on how you're going to implement it. So I'm with on the Councilmember Bray on that. So with that, great discussion. And what, you got a follow-up? Go ahead.
Just to make sure, Councilmember Loretano asked for a breakdown of what everybody in the valley is doing with their stuff. I just want to make sure staff captured that we will provide that to the council. That's a really important key to this moving forward. It's certainly not to inform a decision tonight or next week or next month, but it's really important that everybody get the answer to that, yeah.
Okay, I agree.
We'll definitely get that together. And the other thing is, we do have in the programmed right now for the tentative budget would be our transportation master plan update. As Smeed mentioned earlier, transit is part of transportation master plan, so it would be definitely looked at in the greater context of transportation at that time as well.
Okay, go ahead.
The next item under our financial policies that we looked at under the auspices of what can we do to give back is property tax rate reduction. Currently, our policy says we can issue GO bonds when the total property tax rate hits $1.74 or less. Current and planned debt will keep that rate at 1.735 through fiscal year 2024. After that, if we did not issue debt, it would drop to $1.50 and then continue to drop after that. So one thing for council consideration would be, rather than have that bar being $1.74, lowering that down. We did show some historically. We have had rates, our policy go from $2 to $2.10 in 2005. It got reduced to $1.60, and it stayed that way for about a 10-year period, and we did not issue any GO bond debt during that 10-year period because we had a little recession happen. And then in fiscal year 17, we raised it to our current limit of $1.74.
Who wants to start this off? All right.
The only way that we're going to affect the property tax rate is to not issue any more GO bonds.
Correct.
And so to pretend for any moment that we're going to effectively be able to reduce the property tax rate without actually reducing the levy, without actually then getting into the challenge, this is to the mayor's point, earlier, this is probably which is why I have never in all my years moved to reduce this. This is not the place to do it. We're capped by state law. It's constant fluctuation, and it only affects the people who own the property. It doesn't affect anyone who rents. It doesn't affect, this is not the solution to quote unquote saving the taxpayer money. I'm also not a fan personally of not having debt. There's good debt. This is good debt. Not a single person sitting in here tonight has bought a house or bought a car with cash. None of us have. And using government debt is the way that your city buys things without having to use all cash. If we waited to use all cash, we'd have one fire station, we'd have no rec campus, we'd have nothing. And I will speak to that and I counted it out earlier. I've got all of 22, all of 23, and all of 24. I will say that every single day until I walk out the door on January 1st of 25. So this conversation this makes absolutely zero sense to me.
You're on a roll tonight. Councilmember Kano.
If I recall, where the conversation does come in is the levy. Whether we go with that, and it's taken me a couple of years, rate versus levy, to go through that. So I don't know if that's a part of analyzing this. I think you make really good points about the bonds, the GO bonds. I mean, you're right. There's debt that is appropriate, and we definitely have a lot of good things to show for it. So I just don't know if there's another half of the equation to this conversation.
Campbell?
Well, I still want us to develop the 40 acres on the other side of the rec center, so we'd have to do that with geo bonds. And I don't
Yeah.
know what else is left that we're going to be building or what, I don't know what's out on well, more fire stations, of course. And, I'm hoping we finally get the police station finished. And I just don't know what else is on the horizon, but we don't have to drop, we can go out for debt like we did before and not spend it right away, just have it so that when we're ready, we can do something.
Correct. We can go out for voter authorized debt and not issue any debt or issue debt as we feel appropriate.
Yeah, I remember that the voters said yes.
Correct.
Well, maybe we need to think about that.
Vice Mayor?
I agree with Phil. You want it in writing?
Now you're scaring me.
I know.
Yeah, I also don't want to affect our bond capacity or the ability to bond, because I do think there's a lot of great bonding opportunities. The policy, so we have to hit 1.74. If we go above 1.74, then we can't bond, or we have to, I just want to make sure I understand what you're getting at. If it helps us get more capacity, if it's less, or if it's more, where that 1.74 is.
The $1.74 is what our total tax rate cannot exceed if we're going to issue more debt. So if the total of our primary property tax levy and our levy needed for geo bond debt, if that calculated out to the rate being higher than $1.75 or $1.74, we would not be able to issue debt. So by lowering the rate, it means you can have less outstanding geo bond debt.
Okay, yeah, I'm okay where we're at now with the rate and paying it off than asking for more bonding capacity for other projects and things. So I don't want to affect our bonding capacity. So I think the 1.74 is good for now. I mean, if you see something where there's more opportunities or we need to go higher so we can have more to not tie the bonding capacity to the 1.74 that limits us from having some great project or possibility, then definitely bring that forward. But I'm okay with the 1.74.
Councilmember Loretano?
Thank you, Doug. You all have done a great job about keeping us, refinancing and keeping the debt as low as possible. So I think that's greatly appreciated. And I'll just say I 100% agree with Councilmember Stipp on this issue.
Councilmember Bray? Oh, my goodness. On a roll.
I love it. I love it. Oh my God.
The first thing, you're not going to do any geos till you go out and get approval again because you're tapped out, right?
Correct. We have, with the bond issue that will be coming forward on the next council meeting for authorization for the public safety building, as well as fire stations in Camelback Road, that'll exhaust all of our authorized voter obligation debt, with the exception of some for wastewater, which we do not ever intend using, and stormwater and bridges, which may come into play with the Estrella Mountain Bridge, or with the Estrella Bridge. However, there is no other authorization, and that is something that we would be coming back to council with a timeline and an idea for an election in November of 2023.
Okay, so you still got to get the committee set up and review all the CIP that the bonds would be for, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
All right. Yeah, and that's what drives all this. So, no, I can appreciate Councilmember Stipp's position. We just disagree on levy or rate, but that's another discussion for another day. But other than that, is there anything else you have to add?
One slide I spent the most time on. Is there any other ideas or concepts that council would like to discuss when it comes to revenue policies or financial policies?
I think we're pretty conservative.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you?
Wait a minute, Councilman Bray, if you have something?
Actually, it was something Mr. Stipp said earlier about, in 2009, the city had asked for the 2.5% on sales tax. Is that correct? And it's never gone away since. I would think that at this point in time, and I don't know where the council's at, or what they've seen, but I think that it would be prudent to look at possibly phasing that out, or what does that look like? Because as we're in a growth period, right, we're going to gain, more dollars to tax, and at a lower rate, I think, especially if the city's asked for it to get out of tough times, if the city is financially sound moving forward, then it only makes sense to say, thanks citizens, and here's the 2.5 back, or however it works. I mean, there's ways to phase it in over time, but I think that the council should consider that.
It wasn't a 2.5 increase. It was 2.5. It was a 0.5% increase.
Oh.
2 to 2. Yeah. So. Noted. Yeah. Anything else?
And is that something, the rest of council, if you can please talk about that topic and let us know if that's something you want us to be pursuing right now and looking at?
I'm no.
I'm a no, because I think the hit would be more than the 5.3 million. I'm sure it'd be like a lot more, wouldn't it?
It would be substantial.
Yes.
20%, it would be 20% of our total taxes, so about 20 million plus.
So you're talking a 20 million hit.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not in for that right now.
Councilmember Stipp, do you have something?
Yeah, just one of the, just to help Councilmember Bray through this, the rate went up from 2% to 2.5, and then shortly thereafter, we took the food tax from 2.5 down to 2.
Correct.
So we made some movements later. Your argument is the same as my argument on the food tax. The challenge that I think we have always faced is it does cost money to run this place at the end of the day. And on the sales tax side, that is, as everyone has pointed out, is a much larger hit. What'd you say, Doug, $20 million?
About 20 million.
Yeah, as opposed to the 5 million, which I think you could make up the 5 million ongoing in a different fashion than you can 20 million. So while I appreciate the move on that, I think we're too far away now. If we were going to do that, we would have done it in 11 or 12 or 13. But for all the reasons that were mentioned earlier, the council at the time chose not to because the tremendous uncertainty. And that's why I was going after the food tax, because that's truly a resident thing. And that license plate study was done back in 06 or 07. It has never been repeated again in the city. So we really don't know. We're just guessing. But so I'm not necessarily in favor of it either, even though that's my not running for anything position ever. That's where I stand on that one.
Did I hear consensus on that? Good consensus? Okay. All right, with that, anything else?
Nothing else for me.
All right, great discussion. At this time, does the council have any comments, commendations, or reports on current events or requests for future items? Yes, Councilmember Stipp.
Yeah, just, I've been talking about it off and on for the last 6 months or so, but we, the Valley Metro Board, did make an appointment of Jessica Mefford Miller to be the new CEO of Valley Metro, effective April 4th. Scott Smith will assume the role of senior advisor to the CEO from April 4th through June 30, when his contract is up. As I mentioned earlier, we've got some new leadership headed into that realm, which will help us all navigate going forward on that. So
that's good news. Anybody else? Yes, go ahead.
It was really good to see spring training back in Goodyear, so that was very exciting to see that. I feel like we have less games. I didn't count them. I feel we have less games than normal. So, but still, it was really great to see that come back to Goodyear. It was also great to see the opening day of Little League, also the next day too. So it's a great time to be in Goodyear, and I was glad to see a lot of out-of-state people were very quick to get plane tickets to get here for spring training. So that was really refreshing and good to see for our city as well. So.
Councilmember Campbell?
So the mayor and I separately attended the Millennium High School Desert Edge Canyon View Aquafria Fine Arts Festival, which was absolutely fantastic. The students are so talented, and we were very impressed with the paintings, the ceramics, the actual live performances. Everything was so well done, and we really enjoyed it. And our mayor even selected his Mayor's Choice Award, which he did a very good job of that. And then also, let's see, what else? We did something else beside the Little League.
Oh, no, I was thinking of Little League.
Oh, yeah, we went to the Goodyear Little League opening, and that was really wonderful. It's so exciting to see how many children are involved in the Little League, girls and boys. And we're so happy that the league is so successful, and we thank our Parks and Rec Department for being such a great partner with them. And I can't tell you how many of the parents thanked us for our cooperation as a city and making this event happen so well. And the parents really outdid themselves with the raffle prizes and the bouncy houses, and it was just a really fun day for everyone. So they enjoyed having us, and we enjoyed being there.
I think the only thing they mentioned, I think it was it 833 kids?
800 and
Nine?
some 50, something like that.
Yeah, kids. So, I mean, there was a lot of kids out there. There was a lot of people out there. And the one thing they mentioned, up there was they need phase 2. So they get they have some more
They want
fields
100
to
more
play on.
fields.
So
Yeah.
that's what they asked for. Does the city manager have anything to report?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up on Vice Mayor's comments, great opening weekend for spring training baseball. It is an abbreviated season, so we encourage everyone to get out there and experience a game. For our opening weekend, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we had more than 13,000 visitors come out and enjoy a game at the Goodyear Ballpark.
That's it? All right, no further business. Meeting's adjourned.